this time it now includes a live tweet. So we're just pulling on a hashtag. You just use a little bit of code on the server side to pull in tweets on a hashtag or do a search, and then you get a little XML file on the interwebs, and you can pull it down into Quartz in real time, and then you can get what people are saying in the moment, which is kind of fun. And because Quartz is rendering in real time and it's a 3D world, you can create something that looks more like this in the middle rather than something that looks on the right, which is your sort of standard Twitter scroller. Hopefully that's a little bit more interesting. And then other fun things you can do, the new DJM 900 Nexus. I don't know if working with DJs is a bad concept around here, but we do have one here tonight. We don't have a Nexus, but basically they've stuck a USB on the latest Pioneer mixer, so it's just a big MIDI box. So now you can take that and do whatever you want with it. You know, hook up effects to color effects on the mixer, create AV sets. You know, do something fun. Was the guts of how we made Boys Noise Tour Visuals, was just mucking around with all that kind of stuff.
Using MIDI on that, is it?
Yeah. So basically this has, ironically, of course, in the video showing it, we didn't show the USB plugged in, but it's just up on the top left of the mixer. There's now a like USB-B, like a printer. So you can just plug that into your, and now the mixer is a MIDI controller. It's not 100% flawless on some of the color effects are okay, but the other side is a bit annoying. This is just cubey stuff. Anyway, I'm now going to go back and show you what actually Quartz Composer looks like. So the reasons you mightn't work with Quartz Composer is because it looks like this. It's not like a nice Photoshop where you pick your brush tool and you go paint and you can see it, or it's not like a timeline where you can see I brought my video in there and it does stuff. So what I'll do is try and explain the little bits and pieces of how this works, and then hopefully that will mean that you'll feel free to experiment in your own time. So over here on the left, this is the editor. So this is where we put patches, as they're called. And then over here, this is the viewer. And the viewer is like our camera into the world. And whatever happens over here is what we see inside the VJ software and will go out onto the projector. So whenever you launch Quartz Composer, you can do new from template, which can kind of be a good place to start. So you can do things like this, and then it will show you a little bit of code that's already been made. You've got some clouds there, not very exciting. But you can see here, things are connected up, and that's what makes it go. So does that make sense that you put some boxes on this side, and it comes over here? So I'll start with a super basic example. Let's get a video. Okay, so this is just a video file from the Finder, and you can just drop it in. But you'll see here, the first thing you might encounter is I put a video file into Quartz, but I can't see it. Why not? And that's because there's a couple of different types of patch. So you get in here a little bit of categorization. So what you want is a render object, because that's basically you connect a producer to a renderer. So if it's blue, it means you'll see it. So we take the image output to the image input, and then we get our video. Ah, wonderful. I love you. Don't use Quartz on Mavericks ever. Yeah, so that'll happen, unfortunately, a little bit. It'll all be okay. Yeah, so I'll just do that again quickly. So it was a billboard from the render. The good? Oh, now we've lost the audio. Test. Now it's back. So the good thing. Hello? Jim? There you go. Win. So The good thing about having this annoyance of having to add in renderers and producers and that kind of thing is actually you can be a bit more flexible in what you connect up. So I'm going to try this again. So instead of putting the image just onto one connector, we can now put it onto the front, the left, the right, the back, and the top, and the bottom. And so now we've actually got our video on a cube. And you see here you get this little input parameters, it's called. So this is like where you control all of these little boxes in here. So you can see here, you've got some things if you've done work with 3D. Is everyone familiar with X, Y, and Z? If you're not familiar with X, Y, and Z, put your hand up. Awesome. So you know a little bit about that. So you can position the thing around. I'm just going to change it to be the right aspect. No, I'm going to change the width so it's the right aspect ratio, roughly, for this video. So now one of the other things we can add is processor. No, let's just do. So all of these little things whizzing past in the library, these are all your tools. So rather than having just like 10 or 20, you've got a bazillion. So we're going to put an audio input in, and then we'll take the volume peak into the height. And I'm just going to put a little object in here called a clear, which gives us a nice black background. So now we have a video which is on a cube that I'm going to prove to you it's a cube in a second. But now it's responding to my voice in real time. So it's just growing the height right now, which isn't super exciting. But if you can imagine doing that in After Effects, it's going to take a long time, and you're going to have to choose your audio and render it out and move keyframes around. Whereas we've done that in about 20, 30 seconds in Quartz Composer. So then I'll show you another little thing in here. This is the wave generator, as I now call it. If you're familiar with like basically an LFO in music or an LFO in it's a wave. It's just like a weird bit of math that makes things move organically. So if you connect that up to the Y rotation, then that would show it's a cube. But right now you'll see in the inspector here, we're using a sine wave, but we're only going from 0.5 to 0.5. So rotations go from 0 to 360. Yay. So we'll change this to 180 and that on 0. And the period is how long it takes. So we'll make that 16. Test, yes, back in the game. So now we can see we've got our cube and it's spinning and responding to audio. You might think this is not looking very pretty, so you could design some much more specific content that had maybe some nice just bars or simple moving lines that would be better than that video file that's running on it. But another thing is this audio input is kind of maybe changing it too much. So the good thing about Quartz is it's super flexible, so you can just grab a little math patch. And so this guy then, we can connect the volume peak into it, and then it into the height of our cube. And then now we'll just add, say, 0.5. And we'll go in maybe and add a second, little bit of sums. We'll do a divide by 2 first, just to reduce the range. And then do plus 0.6 will do. So that means now our cube, rather than going all the way down to 0, will stay in a slightly nicer range. And so, you know, you can kind of see the imagery a little better. So that's fair enough. You've got a cube spinning in space. But then the good thing, another sort of core or key concept of Quartz is that we can make lots of things very easily. So basically, it's like you take all of your little objects and you grab them all together and then you put them inside another object. And that object, if it's got square corners, is like an environment, so it'll take all your other little bits and make them something different. So we'll grab our cube, our video, just for simplicity, we'll just grab billboard, not using anymore. So grab all these guys, and we just do copy and paste, or cut. And then we go double click to go inside. So now up here you can see, if you ever get lost, this is on the top left here where you are. And then we do paste. And now we have lots and lots of cubes. Let me just move that. Yes, good call, Jim. Thank you. We'll do that so you can kind of see what's going on a little bit. And then, yeah, the cube, we'll change that down to just 0.6. And then we'll divide that by 4. And then we'll do one other thing, which always helps when you're working with this kind of thing, is we'll use a trackball, which is again just another one of these little environments. So that means we can take this guy, cut him, and put him inside this guy. And now we can move around with the mouse. We can move our 3D objects around. So now you can see we've got this collection or ring of cubes that all have a video playing, and they're all responding to the audio too. So now we're beginning to build up something that maybe looks a little bit interesting, or with the right content running on it, could be possibly quite cool. You see that kind of overlapping on each other right now, so we'll just fix that with the settings and the replicating space. Basically, the best way to learn all these objects is don't be put off by the fact there's like 20 different inputs. Just sit and play with the numbers. There's little sliders here on each one. So you can see here as I run that wheel around, it's changing that value. So now we can spread them out so that they don't bang into each other anymore. And then always sort of save this as you go along. And then the one thing you will see about, so this is the viewer, as I described earlier. You can kind of stop and start your compositions. And one thing about the trackball is it lets you look around your world, but it doesn't remember what you told it. So for that, you use a different one. This one's called 3D transform. So it might seem like I'm randomly picking these out of the air, but there's a lot of them. Once you start playing around with it, there's a lot of them you'll use over and over again, and you'll become familiar with their names. There's quite a lot of video tutorials, and I also wrote a book on it, so you know, it's okay. You can find the information. So in there. So now, if we remember our friend, the LFO, who's doing the spinning round right now, we can bring him back at this top level, and we can give him some slightly different settings. So let's say 15, 0, 32. And then we'll put this onto the rotation Z. And then we'll duplicate him just with standard Apple D. And then we'll maybe give him 30, 48. Change it to cosine. And then we'll put that onto X. And then we'll zoom out a little bit too with translation Z. So what I'm trying to do here is, by using the organic mathematical waves, I can begin to build up a more complex set of animation parameters. And ultimately, the great thing about waves is they feel quite organic. So slowly, basically once you get 4 or 5 of them changing the parameters, then sooner or later your eye begins to lose the ability to see the loop, and then you begin to create something that's more interesting because people feel like it's organic and it's moving and it's flowing. There's loads of cool parameters within the replicating space here as well for publishing. Let's just pick that and make the amplitude 170. So you can sort of build up all these complicated snakes and things like that. So yeah, so in summary, I quite like Quartz Composer. It can do lots of fun things. I was trying to show you something that would result in something interesting in a short period of your effort. I'm not sure if you agree if this is interesting or not, but hopefully you can see how, with a bit of thought and experimentation, you could make it interesting. Other little objects that are good are, you've got the XML importer, which I mentioned if you want to take in those social media streams, so anything that's XML out there. Even RSS feeds are very simple. You can just go and put in this one, you can see it's got the Apple feed, and you use a little thing called a structure to break that down. But the variety of inputs you can put into Quartz Composer, you can put MIDI in, you can put keyboard in, you can put so many different things in and then create so many different things out. So it's just a different way to work compared to a timeline or a canvas. You kind of, I don't know, I like to experiment. I like to learn by experimentation. So you can basically, the way there's one replicating space there, we could put that in another one, and then we'd have another multiple of that, and we could put that in another one until eventually it crashes. But you can basically build up all this complexity, and by sort of playing with it, you discover all kinds of new interesting things. And so that's, sometimes you want to design it, you want to storyboard it, you want it to look exactly how you want it to like do this at this second and this at that second. But I think particularly if you're performing with music you don't necessarily have before the event, it's a way of kind of improvising, and it's a way of keeping your sets interesting. Because if you imagine this looked a bit more interesting, and then you have that running on four of them running on 4 layers, then the pressure on you to perform with the audio super tight is kind of taken away, because Quartz is already responding to the audio, it's already staying interesting, so you can kind of blend between them and have a more almost like strategic, or not strategic, but maybe complex interaction with the music, where you begin to choose different, like in movements of the music, you can bring in little bits whenever little bits come in, and you can kind of, I find anyway, you can more organically interact with the performance of an audio artist if you're doing that, or your own AV set. You can more authentically represent the music if you've got multiple layers of Quartz that are all responding. You kind of begin to compose in the more traditional sense, like you've got your little Quartz instruments and you're composing and making them do lots of things at once, and hopefully it either gives you more fun or makes a better show. So if you want to know more about this, there's lots of people in the room here who you can ask questions to. Put your hands up if you know enough about Quartz to answer a beginner question. Okay, so we've got London Quartz Composer Group here too. You can check them out there on Facebook. There's a site called quartzcomposer.co.uk, which is by a guy called Jim, who's super Quartz mad. There's our own site, iloveqc.org. I've got cards if you want. And the VDMX forums, there's quite a lot of Quartz chat in there, and if you're really gonna go for it, you can sign up on the Apple developer list and start posting on there. To get Quartz, probably should have mentioned that at the start, you do need to go to Apple and sign up on the Apple developer site. You sign up for free, and then you click through a few links, and then you can download graphics tools for Xcode. If you just Google install Quartz Composer, you'll get a video tutorial, and it'll show you all how. Any questions?
How much does it cost?
It's free! Any other questions?
You said that you can use it in Resolute. How do you do that?
Okay, good question. Well, you already have it. Joris is another very talented Quartz guy. Hybrid Visuals or GoTo10. So in your content.
Only on an Apple, must be said. It doesn't work on PC.
Yes, that's worth mentioning. So if we go and find some Quartz, just literally drag and drop it in and This is probably a broken Quartz I've just loaded, but that'll make my demo look great. Come on. There we go. That's got some visuals. Not doing anything interesting or looking pretty, but there you go. Quartz in Resolume. And then you get your little inputs if we've given you any somewhere around here in the clip settings. And you can hook that up to your FFT and all the rest of it. Any more questions? Great. Well, thank you for your time, and I hope the rest of the night is a lot more interesting. Take it easy.
Short intermission, and then we have Space Love 666.